Okay, good. So there's some information about us. If you're not familiar with the West Center, there's our objectives. And I just want to start with a very short review on communication. And the reason I start this Holidays and Dementia with a review on communication is because we want you to share this. If you've got family coming in, if you've got friends maybe that are going to come around that don't or hasn't visited your loved one in a while, one of the things that they need to know is how to communicate with someone with dementia. And it's always a good reminder for us anyway. Because what I've seen time and time again, especially at the holidays, when people come around that maybe haven't been around, is that they want to walk up to the person with dementia and in a very loud voice say, "Do you remember me?" Because they haven't seen them in a while. And that's one of the worst things we can do to somebody with dementia. So we never want to use that word remember. But we can go and say something like, "It's so good to see you again, Grandpa," and call them who they are to us. We always want to use that word okay. If our loved one then says something like, "You're the one that took all my money," okay, well, let me fix that. And I'm going to call the bank. I'm using a therapeutic story. Some people call those a lie. We're going to call them a therapeutic story. And I'm just going to call my cell phone, or I'm going to call another number, and I'm going to get that fixed at the bank. And then I'm going to distract away. We have probably figured out already, we become masters of distraction whenever we have a loved one with dementia. And there's 4 things that we use to distract that tend to work over and over again. One good thing about the holidays is there are a lot of sweets out there right now, and people with dementia tend to lose their taste except for sweet. And so we can use candy, and we can use cookies, and we can use ice cream. I've said many times, ice cream is God's gift to dementia, where if we can go in there and get some ice cream, a person with dementia can just have one thought at a time. And if we can get that thought over here onto these wonderful holiday cookies. The other one is music. Their music. And at this time of year, in everybody's music set, that music that we listen to between the ages of 10 and 25, there is holiday music. Because think about it, we learned those songs when we were children. And so Christmas music, Christmas hymns are parts of who we are for most people. So we can sing Christmas music all year long because we know it. And so that's a great thing about the holidays right now, is being able to use music. That other picture that you see there is actually of it's like a drum therapy. It looks like great big exercise balls that they're hitting with drumsticks, but that rhythmic part of the brain remains intact. And we'll even see our loved ones start to do some rhythmic type motions with their hands, where maybe they pick, or their hand it looks like it kind of is even like a tremor, but it's just a rhythmic type motion. They may rock back and forth. That's self-soothing is what that is. But what if we gave them something to hit with rhythmically? So doing a drum set. And then animals and children. And if you don't have real animals or real children, that just happens to be my grandbabies up there in the upper right. I don't know how that picture got in here. If you don't have real animals or real children, go on YouTube and type in funny animal videos, children laughing videos. They're usually 2 to 3 minutes. And if we can watch that little baby right there laughing while we're having some ice cream, all is well with the world. It can make all the difference in the world. Okay, let's jump into some holiday gift ideas for the person with dementia. Many times families will say things like, I don't know what to do other than slippers or a gown or a robe or something like that. There's lots of different things that we can get for people who have dementia that really make a difference and can add to their quality of life. I've already mentioned music, special songs from their past. I'm going to give you some ideas of things to do with maybe some old album covers as well. I'm going to show you those pictures on the next slide. Doing a collage photo frame. And again, I'm going to show you that on the next slide. And then these books with captions. You can have these made at Costco, Sam's, Walgreens, Shutterfly. Now, we tend to want to put pictures in there of the grandbabies. That's not necessarily the book that I'm talking about making. Make them their storybook about their life, their book. And make sure that when you do the wording in the book, you're doing it as if it were them reading the book. So if that first page is a picture of their dad, my dad, Tom, on the farm in Oklahoma, and the next page, the house I grew up in, and it's their story. I have seen this work wonders with people before, whenever they've got a storybook that's all about them. Now, this picture that you see in the upper left-hand corner, this was something that was found at a Kirkland's, and it's a family tree photo frame. I haven't seen it since, but I've seen people make them out of like that photo collage on the right, where they take a label maker and they make their own little family tree type thing. Again, you label the pictures as to who they are to your loved one. This is a beautiful gift. Now, make sure you make copies of the photos. Don't put the actual photos in there, because I've also seen people take that off the wall and decide to wash it, and then there go all of our photos. So use copies of your photos, and when you label it with Uncle Tom, Aunt Sally, who they are to your loved one. I have watched people stand in front of these frames and trace and talk, even people who really aren't very verbal anymore, because boy, is this getting back into that old, that long-term memory. Now, in the lower right, this is a collection of albums. This person loved musicals, and they had a set of album covers, and they took the album covers and they made it into a collage and hung it on the wall. So that was their actual album covers, but they turned it into something that they could look at and they could touch, and it was hanging on the wall. And then those albums weren't just sitting there, they had something to do with it. And then in the lower left, that's another one of the photo books. Another idea is materials to sort, or items to sort. People with dementia will often go through a stage where they like to rummage or they like to sort. So if we can use something that is actually theirs, imagine taking, I've got a picture here of an old toolbox. If we went and we got a toolbox and we put in that toolbox items that are safe, but items that belong in a toolbox, or a sewing kit, items that belong in a sewing kit, baskets of yarn with lots and lots of colors, so that they can sort, because they're going to remain very tactile. That end stage of the disease is actually called the sensory stage of dementia. So it might not work every time, but it may work many times. And it might not work on Monday, but it works again on Wednesday, or something that they can sort and go through. They also make mini games in large decks of cards, giant Jenga. There's the checkers that's on the rug. Some of us remember that from when we were kids. Connect Four comes in a giant. Here's some pictures here. There's Toss Across at the lower right. That's playing tic-tac-toe, but you're playing it with bean bags. You can find those everywhere. That giant set of cards, I found those at Dollar General. They have the giant cards at Dollar General. And then there's a yarn up there. And then the other one is, I added this because someone gave me this idea because they did it with their loved one. Their mother had collected buttons. And so they put the buttons in these really pretty jars, and they put bows around them, and it became something that they did together. They would sort buttons. She still had her fine motor skills, and they would sit and sort buttons. And then she told me later that they went on Pinterest and she put in crafts to do with buttons, and they made she even made a Christmas tree out of buttons. It was really interesting. You've just got to think outside of the box. Some other things that we can do with a loved one with dementia, this is probably one of my very favorite gifts, is large coffee table books, because they're basically like photo albums or picture books, but they're for adults. And you can find them on everything, anything and everything. I did this program 2 nights ago at First Baptist Keller, and I took a beautiful book, and it's on Elvis. And so it's big pages with these great pictures of Elvis. I went over to our day program yesterday when I was taking it back, and immediately had people around me wanting to look at that book about Elvis. In fact, one of the ladies told me, "He's pretty, isn't he?" I said, "He is pretty, isn't he? Look at Elvis." And we had a great conversation talking about Elvis. But they make those books. I always recommend going to some place like Half Price Books. Go back to the clearance section where they're $3 to $5, because your loved one might decide that they're going to tear those pictures out. And rather than paying $45 or $50 for it, I've spent $5 on it. So if they want to cut it up or tear those pictures out, that's fine. I had a gentleman who used to take those books, and he would cut all the pictures of airplanes out, and then he made his own books. He would take tape and tape the pictures onto paper, and he made his own books about airplanes. What a great thing for him to do. And then we could go up and he would tell us stories of the airplanes because he'd been a pilot. Our goal here is to create connections. That's the goal, is we're creating connections. But you see here, this is a birdhouse kit. This is something you can pick up at Michael's. You can pick up model airplanes, model cars, little ornament kits. Let me show you some examples of those. I've got the coffee table books over on the left, and then there's ornaments down in the lower right that are very, very easy for someone who still has those fine motor skills. You just stitch around it. And what if we then put the grandkids' names on each of them? And we're making them for someone else. So we've got a reason or a purpose to be doing this together. In the upper right, you'll see tie blankets. These are blankets you can get at Joann's, you can get at Michael's, you can get at Hobby Lobby, and they're tie blankets, and they're very easy to make, again, if they still have those fine motor skills, and they may not do it perfectly, but it's a time that you can connect, and you sit there together and you're tying these blankets, and then we're going to go donate them to the animal shelter, or we're going to drive down to Cook's Children's and donate them to the Children's Hospital. Again, it's giving them a purpose, it's giving them a reason, and it's something that you can do together to make a connection. Noise canceling headphones are a great idea if they'll leave them on their head, if they're okay with them being on their head. If you have a loved one who likes to turn the TV up really, really loud, you can use those headphones for them. And then we get into something called sensory stimulation items. There's pads, pillows, blankets, and I'm going to give you a place where you can actually buy these. Some people call those fidget pads or fidget blankets, and there's a picture of one on the left. And that's a blanket, that's like a lap blanket, and it has zippers on it, and it has Velcro, it has all different types of materials. And so the tactile sensory response, it's bright colors, and it is something that somebody who really is starting to kind of pick or fidget, or they might even be starting to pick at their skin or at their clothes. And if we put this in their lap, it's something to do, it's something to look at. Another one of my favorite things are the nostalgia or the reminiscence picture sets. You can find these on Amazon, and then I'm going to give you 2 other places you can find them. The picture I have there is of a set of cards about cars. Now, those cards are like a 5x7. I've even seen them in an 8x10. We have a set here at the West Center they are an 8x10, and they are of all types of movie stars and singers from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And to be able to look, the recognition that you will see on a person's face. Again, I did this just yesterday morning when I was taking them back over to the day program, and I had a picture of Buddy Holly on top. And I showed it as I walked in the door, and I had someone say, "That's Buddy Holly." And I said, "It is. Tell me about Buddy Holly." And they started talking about his glasses. That recognition, and to still be able to talk. And then what if we listen to some Buddy Holly? Wow, what a connection we're making. Weighted blankets is also a really good idea for a person with dementia, but you do want to get the lightly weighted blankets. Don't get the ones that are real heavy, like what we might want. The reason this is because a person with dementia, so many times, especially later in the disease, we're not holding them, we're not hugging them, we're not doing anything with them hands-on that isn't a task. And they need to feel held and loved. And that weighted blanket feels like a hug. It feels like they're being held. It's safe and it's secure. Many people have done this the last couple of years and said it was a great gift, and they were so glad that they got it. What you see here are also some other types of sensory items. In the upper right, that's actually a water mat. And what you do is the items in there are almost a neon color, and you can just squish that water back and forth. In the lower left, that's kinetic sand. It's a kinetic sand mat. What's interesting is when I had some of these over in the day program, you know who ended up messing with them more than anybody? The staff. We did. We were the ones sitting there messing with it. It's very soothing. There's something relaxing about doing the water mat and the kinetic sand mats. The woman who's sitting in the chair there is doing what it's kind of like a busy pillow or a fidget pillow. It has zippers, it has Velcro. Again, it's kind of like that blanket, but it's in a pillow. And then this is one of my favorites. I love it because it's not messy at all. That looks like a white sheet of paper, but whenever you take a paintbrush and water, just water, and you paint the water on it, these beautiful pictures appear. So it looks like you painted this beautiful picture. That one happens to have a blue jay that's showing up there. And again, I'm going to give you some websites where to find it. These are some easy things that you can do. You can actually buy sets of items from this website that I'll be telling you in just a minute. The poppets that are really popular right now, you can find these everywhere. They've got a ton of them in Five Below. I just bought some the other day, and they're poppets. It's almost like those of us who like to sit and pop bubble wrap, but it goes through on one side and then you turn it over and you pop it through on the other side. And then those are lace cards on the bottom. These are some pillows that are made out of pictures, and it's called Mini Me Doll. Mini Me Doll. And you can actually take a photo from your phone and have it turned into a doll. And then the one on the lower left, it was a photo of a person's cat, and they turn it into a pillow. So great ideas. You can have pillows like the one in the lower left. You can have those made at Shutterfly as well. Now, I'm not a huge fan of baby dolls. However, I have seen them work wonders, especially with women who are at the stage in the disease where they are a young mother and they are looking for their babies, or they're afraid something's happened to their babies and they need a baby. Now, I do not recommend you go to Dollar General and get a $4 baby doll that doesn't look real at all, but they make dolls that are specific for people with dementia, and they're weighted babies. They're weighted baby dolls. So they have some weight to them. They have little fat arms and legs, little rolls in them, so they look much more real. Their eyes open and close. And you can change their clothes, getting clothes that have Velcro on them. One of the websites where you can find these items is here at the bottom. It's ssww.com. It's called SNS Worldwide. And the one I did not add, and I'll have Jamie put this in the email whenever it goes out, is there's also a website called ALZ Store, ALZ Store, ALZ Store. Now go there and get good ideas, and then check on Amazon, because you might can get the stuff cheaper on Amazon. But this SNS Worldwide, up in their search, if you type in dementia, it's going to pull up so many different items for dementia, it'll just blow your mind. A lot of these pictures that I've shown you today have come from their website. Another thing, what you're looking at here are robotic pets. Those aren't just stuffed animals. Those are robotic pets that are made specifically for people with dementia. They breathe. Their chest goes up and down. Those cats purr. They meow. The dogs bark. They kind of I saw a lady who had one in one of our houses, and she had it up on the bed, and it jumped off the bed, and she was getting onto that dog for jumping off the bed because it kind of made a hop. They're really, really good for people with dementia, and you will find you have fun with them also. They're a lot of fun. So therapeutic robotic pets. I wanted to show you these pictures. These are some pictures of bears and pillows that were actually made out of a person's clothing. What a great gift for people. We don't know what to do with our loved one's clothing sometimes. If your loved one is on hospice, many people, many of the different hospices will have volunteers who will make these. These are not uncommon. They'll make, and this was one of our support group members sent me these pictures, and I asked if I could use them. And look at these bears, look up close. Aren't those great that the family then gets to keep those, and it's something that's made out of his own clothing. This one was an idea that came from a support group member, and she talked about that her husband was a person who loved to walk. He just walked and walked and walked. And so she never could really get him to sit down and have Christmas. So she came up with the idea of Christmas in a bag. So she just took Christmas with her every time she went to visit him. And if she could get him to sit down, they'd just have a little Christmas celebration right then and there, whether it was December 1st or December 15th or December 25th. They had Christmas whenever she could get him to have Christmas. She had a really small little decorated pre-lit tree. It has batteries in it. That's a little bitty tree. It's probably less than a foot tall. I've seen them before. Again, Five Below has those. I got one just the other day for my granddaughter. She had decorated paper cups and plates. She had those little Debbie cakes or little Debbie cookies that she just kept down in there. And then she had some small wrapped gifts for him. So when he was ready to have Christmas, they had Christmas. And she was always ready with Christmas in a bag. I thought that was a genius idea. Holiday gifts for the caregiver. So whenever somebody asks, what can I get for you if you're the caregiver? Well, we love to have gift certificates to salons and spas and restaurants, the theater, and massage. However, what we really need for us to be able to go and do that is we need for somebody to come and stay with our loved one so that we can get a break. So if you get somebody one of those gift certificates, make sure that you also offer to stay with their loved one while they go. Ready-made meals. Most people, those of you who are on here who are caregivers, we're really bad about asking for help. People will say, what can I do for you? And they may be very sincere, and many times, oh, we're okay, we've got it. What if somebody committed to bringing you dinner once a month? What if somebody had groceries delivered to your house? Wow, that'd be nice. So I encourage people, especially now, grocery delivery is easy to do. What if once a month we sent groceries over to somebody's house? Just some generic stuff for them. Time to go and run some errands or do things for somebody whose loved one has dementia. I always recommend making them like a coupon book of, I will mow your yard, I'll go pick up your prescriptions, I'll take your dog to the groomer. You can get gift certificates to adult day programs and respite. One of the best things we can do is just be a listening ear, and a listening ear that doesn't try to fix anything. Because you can't fix anything. But boy, do we need to be heard whenever we're a caregiver of somebody with dementia. We need somebody sometimes to just hear us. That's why support groups are so important. Let's shift and kind of talk about ways that we can include our loved ones during the holidays. One of the worst things that we can do during the holiday season is to just tell our loved one to go sit down. We've got it. Because imagine if you were that person who kept walking into the kitchen because you've always prepared the meals. But your family's in there and they're laughing and they're talking and everybody seems to be having a good time and you can smell their cooking. But they keep telling you to go sit down and watch TV. Think about what that person's hearing because their amygdala is still intact and they understand feelings and emotions. We don't need you. You're in the way. You're going to make a mess of things. Get out of here. That's what they're hearing. Let them participate. Let them hang the ornaments on the tree. Who cares if they put all of the ornaments right here in this little section right in front of them? They're going to go to bed at some point, and then we'll rearrange the ornaments on the tree. Let them be part of it. Let them set the table. Let them do something with the Christmas cards. One of my favorite things is let them be in the kitchen and stir batter. You don't have to use that batter. You don't have to use whatever it is that you've got them doing, but let them think that they're part of it. Listening to Christmas carols and singing, and then watching old holiday movies. Who doesn't like watching Charlie Brown Christmas? That's for adults too. Or watching Rudolph or watching Frosty. That's not just for kids. We all grew up with that and watching those. Let's watch them. Now, I do want to mention something there. I've got holiday cards, and this is something that I watched with my very own eyes over the course of 3 years. I used to work in a place where right outside of my office was an open area where families would go, and we did lots of activities there. And I had a resident whose daughter came and talked to me, and she said, "Holly, my mom and I have always done our cards together. Always. We just do Christmas cards together. How am I going to do them this year?" And I said, "Well, you're going to do them right out here at that table. You're still going to do Christmas cards together." She said, "Okay." So she brought the cards up, and she and her mom sat at that table. Her mom could still sign her name. And that's what they did. They did their Christmas cards together, just like they'd always done. Well, the next year came around, and her mom couldn't write anymore. She couldn't sign her name. So we kind of brainstormed what could her mom do, because she still wanted to keep this tradition with her mother. She found, I think at Michael's Hobby Lobby, some Christmas stamps that she could just stamp all over the Christmas cards. And the daughter signed, and her mama stamped Christmas stamps all over on the envelopes too. But she was participating, making a connection, and making a memory with her mom. That third year, her mom couldn't do the stamps. In fact, she couldn't do much of anything with her hands anymore. But she still came, and she still sat there and did the cards, and she played Christmas music on her phone. And they listened to Christmas music, and she told her mom the story of each of the cards. She'd hold it up and say, "I'm sending this one to Mary. This one is the one," just like they'd always done. But that daughter accommodated the disease and met her mother where she was in the disease process. And that was her mom's last Christmas. And what a beautiful tradition that she was able to keep. She just changed it up to make it fit for them. If going to a religious service at Christmas has always been something that you do, you may have to change it up this year, and we may end up watching it. Instead of going, we may watch it. Most all churches now are live streaming or doing their services on Facebook Live, or where we can watch it on TV or on the computer. Sticking bows on gifts, going for walks, going for a ride to see lights. Most everybody can still do that. We can try it. And then reminiscing about childhood holidays. One of the best things that we can ever learn to say to a person with dementia is, "Tell me more. Tell me about your favorite Christmas gift ever. What did you get in your stockings?" The stories I have heard from people with dementia when I've asked that question. Tell me what you got in your stockings, about oranges and pennies and walnuts and the things that they got in their stockings that they looked forward to, and candy canes. I've heard some great stories. Get those stories and record them so that you don't lose those stories. You don't know how long they're going to be able to tell those stories. Now, one of the things I also want to make sure that we take time to talk about is that this year is going to be different from last year. We're a year further into a progressive disease. Your loved one's in a different place, and you are in a different place as well. So neither one of you have ever been here before. So what worked last year isn't necessarily going to work this year. Again, we've got to accommodate the disease and where they are now. and not get so hung up in the commercial part of the disease, of the holiday, that we lose the connection. We also want to keep our celebrating as simple as possible, because too much stimulation may cause a challenging expression, is what we're calling them now. We don't like using the word behavior because we all have behaviors. But too much stimulation can cause someone to really have a challenging expression. We don't want to try to bring them to our reality. Some of you have heard me tell about the Christmas sweater, but some of you have not, so I'm just going to share that real quick. You know that many times a person who has dementia will get a particular item they like to wear over and over and over and over again. And whenever they are placed, whenever they are in a center or a facility, sometimes that item they like to wear over and over again doesn't belong to them. It belongs to somebody else, but they love it. And I had a resident who had a yellow sweater with a stain on it that she loved to wear. That's all she wanted to wear, and it made the daughter crazy. Every time she'd come up there, my mother's in a yellow sweater that's not even hers, and it has a stain on it. And we were doing Christmas pictures, and we had Santa coming, and the daughter bought a beautiful red Christmas sweater and insisted that her mom wear it. Mom didn't want to wear it. She wanted to wear the yellow sweater with a stain on it that wasn't hers. And the daughter was getting very, very ugly with some of our staff and some of our associates. And I got called to come and talk with her. And I told her, I said, you know what? We can fight your mama over this and have a battle and get her to put on that sweater. And then she probably isn't going to come out of this room. And she's going to be mad maybe for the rest of the evening. And you're not even going to get the picture. But what if we went down there and we just took a Christmas picture with her in this yellow sweater with stain on it that's not even hers, and she's happy? And I said to that daughter, with love and with compassion, what if this is your last holiday season? What if we don't have another Christmas? And that kind of brought her back to reality. And she got on board, and we took lots of pictures. But her mama was wearing a yellow sweater with stain on it that wasn't hers. And that was her last Christmas. And boy, have I run into that daughter since then who's told me that she treasures those pictures of her mama in that yellow sweater, not the Christmas sweater. That's not what it was about. You've got to keep those things in mind. How to prepare for visitors. We've got visitors coming in, and maybe they haven't seen your loved one in a while. You're going to have to tell them the best times to visit. If your loved one is still at home, we want to keep them on their routine as much as we possibly can. And we have to accommodate our loved one in the disease. So just because family's getting into town at 2:00, that doesn't mean that 2:00 is the best time for you to show up at our house, because maybe 2:00 is when we're resting. Some families will put together a family email so that you only have to type it one time. I've got a few folks in support group who they have one person that they talk to, and then that person gets it out to everybody else so that you're not having to say it over and over and over again. So I recommend that you do that also. The family emails are a great idea. Let your loved one, family, and friends know directly and clearly how your loved one has changed emotionally, mentally, and physically since they've last seen them. Maybe your loved one has become incontinent. Maybe they're eating with their fingers now. Maybe their communication has really changed, and they need to know before they get there. Because keep in mind, most of you have been on our programs over and over, and you've heard us say that amygdala stays intact. That person with dementia is going to be able to read a person's body language, tone, gesture. And so if somebody walks in and looks startled or looks concerned, they're going to pick up on it. So let people know ahead of time where your loved one is now and what works and what doesn't work. Don't bring up such and such. Do bring up such and such. Arrive with ice cream. We talk about big hellos, little goodbyes. Keep in mind also that you may have friends and family that are afraid to be left alone with your loved one because they don't know what to do or say because they've not been around anybody with dementia. And they may be one of these folks that goes in and wants to say, well, how you been doing? What'd you have for lunch today? And your loved one can't answer those questions anymore. But this person isn't familiar with how to talk or how to communicate. Tell them how. Tell them how ahead of time. Stay close by. So if you see your loved one starting to get uncomfortable, you can intervene. Share your plan about challenging behaviors. Now, if dad starts to get upset, we're going to all back off and let him have his chair and his gun smoke, whatever it is that works for him. If mom starts to kind of ramp up or start getting real nervous or is looking around, we're going to give her time in her room by herself. Everybody's going to back off. And then encourage them also to ask you questions, call or email you. I really like email because then you can do that on your own time. Some other tips, and we say all the time about KISS, keep it super simple. And then Jamie's really good about adding sane. Keep it super simple and sane. Remember what this is all about. We want to make sure and stay on that routine as much as possible, not only for our loved ones, but for us too. Make sure that you're getting plenty of rest. Make sure they're getting plenty of rest. Whenever possible, we're going to want to celebrate in your loved one's most familiar setting. Traveling to a new place can cause anxiety. But Holly, we've always had Christmas over at my aunt's house. Okay. Well, maybe you go over to the aunt's house later while somebody comes and stays with your loved one, or maybe family comes to your house, just 2 or 3 people at a time. But we make some changes this year. And if you do decide to everybody go over to aunt's house, have a plan B. Because you might decide to try it. We're going to go over and we're going to try it, but then give yourself permission to go, that didn't work, we're leaving. And don't beat yourself up about it. It's okay. We tried it. We also want to take turns with family members coming in and spending time with our loved one. We do not want to walk into a room of 40 people or have 15 people just show up at the house. That's too much. They're going to be overstimulated. And especially if I don't know who these people are in my house, you might see some challenging expressions. Trust children. Children usually do really, really well with dementia unless somebody has tried to tell them something and scare them. Children do great with dementia. That's why it's one of our 4 music, children, food, and animals, ways to distract. Just let kids be kids. They're usually really, really good with them. Keep in mind that the holidays may trigger in you some memories of last year and the years before. And you may find yourself really grieving the loss of your loved one the way they were. There's something about holiday time that we go, oh my word, last year at Christmas, they were still able to cut their own meat. And now they're only using a spoon. Or last year at this time, they were still walking. And now we're in a wheelchair. Or last year at this time, they were still toileting themselves. And it can just kind of trigger Because it's hard for us to go back and remember, okay, June 15th last year, what were we doing? Well, who knows? But it's pretty easy to remember Christmas of last year, what were we doing? Allow those feelings to come. You need to feel them because it's grief. You've got to give yourself time to grieve and take care of your own physical and emotional needs. But call that what it is. It's grief. You're grieving the loss of your loved one the way that they were. And call it that and allow it to be that. And that's how you start working through it, because you're living in a state of grief when you're a caregiver of somebody with dementia. Can't avoid it by going over it, around it, or under it. We've got to walk through it. So expect those feelings to come and allow them to. So give yourself a little bit of time. Let some people help you. Always have a plan B. Always, regardless of what you're doing. Think about the different things that can overstimulate your loved one. Decorations. Be careful with your decorations. I had a gentleman who 1 year, his family brought in a tree and they had added, the best way I know how to call them are like racing lights. They're the white lights that go real fast. They're racing lights, and you can adjust how fast they go. And he loved them. He loved them the first year. But the second year, when the sun came and he put up the tree and he left, and the sun started going down, his dad all of a sudden was screaming that there were white mice in his room. White mice everywhere. Well, when the sun went down and that Christmas tree lights were shadowed on the floor and those chasing white lights, he was seeing white mice. This year, last year he didn't. So keep that in mind about usually what works best if you're going to have something with lights is white lights that just stay on. They don't blink at all. Just simple white lights that don't change color and they don't blink or run. And some people can't do any lights at all. Just have to have the lights off. I also had somebody one time who had a cornucopia, and it was made out of candles, and it looked like an apple and it smelled like an apple, but it was a candle. And the gentleman picked it up, took a big old bite out of it. And she said, I put that out every year. I've had it out for years and years. Well, this year it looked like an apple. It smelled like an apple. And his brain could not tell him that that wasn't an apple. Again, you're going to get copies of this because we've got 15 minutes left and there's several things I want to get to. So I'm going to speed it up real quick because some of this is going to repeat a little bit. If your loved one is placed in a community, take advantage of different areas in that community. Don't come up and just always visit in their room. That's not normalization. We don't go to somebody's house and pile up in their bedroom. We go in the dining room, in the living room, in the patio, and we sit outside on the porch. So do that whenever you visit your loved one in a community. And then get the community's calendar and come during holiday events. That way you're not having to plan anything. You're there during the pie social. You're there when Santa comes. You're there whenever the kids come and sing Christmas carols. Whatever it is, just use the community schedule. If your loved one is at home, again, try to arrange for those smaller gatherings. Involve your loved one throughout the day and allow them to help with preparations and stick with their schedule as much as possible. Again, I've mentioned avoid blinking lights or other stimuli that could be too much. Be careful about artificial fruit and those food flavored candles. Remove any plants or flowers that could be dangerous if ingested. And then always make sure your loved one has a place to rest. Focus on your loved one's remaining strengths and what they can do, and then allow them to do. We've talked about reminiscing. Get out the Bible and read the Christmas story together. Maybe they used to be the one that read it, and now one of the grandkids is going to read it, but they're going to sit there and hold the Bible and we're going to read it together. Now, I do want to talk about traveling for those of you who are thinking that you might want to travel. Be realistic about what your loved one's going to be able to do this year. Invite that third person to be with you so that you have someone that can help you out. And if you're thinking about taking a very long trip, please talk to your doctor and ask them what they think about it. If you're planning on staying in a hotel at any time, I highly recommend you do a staycation first. A staycation is where you go stay in a hotel close to home. Because I've heard over and over again on support group where people were doing fine in the car, they did fine checking into the hotel, and then it got time for bed. And this isn't my bed. That's not my stuff. And all heck broke loose when it came time for bedtime because their routine was now off. So if we're doing a staycation and we're trying it, we can leave and go home. So I do encourage you, if you are thinking about staying in a hotel, do a trial run close to home. If you're driving, make sure you pack plenty of snacks, pack your loved one's medications, always have an extra change of clothes within easy reach. You never know whenever a bout of incontinence is going to hit. Best place for your loved one to sit is in the middle of the back seat if possible. It keeps them in your line of vision if you're driving. And then turn on those child safety locks so that they can't open the door. And again, you want to try to have somebody go with you. If you're considering flying, there are lots of things to consider. How long can your loved one sit still? How are they going to react to turbulence? How do they do in crowds? I don't know about you, but I can have some challenging behaviors at the airport. What are they going to do? Consider the size of the toilet on an airplane. You're not going to be able to get in there with them. It barely fits one person. If you're going to fly, try to get the aisle in the middle seat. Mid-morning, low peak flights. You can call TSA ahead of time, tell them you're traveling with someone with dementia, and ask for access to airline lounges. Even if you're not a member of the American Express Club, you can ask for a day pass. Also, call in advance for wheelchair assistance. And if your loved one doesn't want to do a wheelchair assistance, use this good therapeutic story. You know, these wheelchair attendants are in training and they're needing some volunteers to practice on. They want us to help them. Let's help these people learn how to go around the airport. Boy, that's a good therapeutic story. I've used that one myself. If you're thinking of going on a train often has pretty views. There's lots of room to move around, but it's loud and it rocks. You also can contact the TSA. If your loved one still lives at home, I highly encourage that you have one of these Medic Alert Safe Return bracelets. The website's right there, medicalert.org. And again, you're going to get these slides. Also, if your loved one still lives at home and is mobile, one of the best things you can do is snap a picture of them every single day, a full-length picture, so that you've got what they have on. Because if they go missing, if you're on a trip, if you're staying in a hotel and your loved one goes missing, you don't want to show them their driver's license picture. They don't look like that anymore. None of us do. But if you take a picture every single day, you got a picture of what they have on that day. If you're staying in a hotel, let them know your loved one has dementia because they've probably got cameras and they could see if your loved one is wandering the halls. Some of the ways to start to take the stress out of the holidays, you're doing it. It's December 1st and you're on a program talking about how we can take the stress out of the holidays. So plan early, be realistic. And here's probably the biggest thing, learn to say no. Pick out just one or two things that you're going to participate in, and to everything else, say no. Can't do it this year. Or we're not going to do it this year. I'm choosing not to do it this year. Keep in mind, there are no have to events. And I've had, Holly, but I have to go over. You have to. Who said you had to? Where's that written down? You don't have to do anything. But we've always, well, this year we're not. It's all right. We do that to ourselves, don't we? Set realistic goals about your time, your finances, and your expectations. Continue to use those things like positive self-talk. Don't be beating yourself down. Events do not have to be perfect. Keep reminding yourself what is important this year. What is important this year? Making the connection making that connection with your loved one, teaching other people how to make a connection with your loved one. That's just beautiful to watch others be able to connect with your loved one in their disease. And as families change and grow, traditions and rituals change and grow also, and that's okay. I want to put up some of the signs that you may have taken on too much. And for some of us, we were having these things before the holiday season, and then let's add the holidays to it. People who have caregivers of those with dementia, many times will start to have gastrointestinal issues like irritable bowel syndrome, because whenever we are under stress and we dump that cortisol and we start pumping adrenaline, our digestive system stops. It's supposed to. We're going into fight, flight, or freeze. Here's some behavior changes that might happen in you that says, I've taken on too much. I'm doing too much. If you start becoming forgetful, if you're confused, you may even be saying something like, I think I've caught it. Is this stuff contagious? I felt that way before. And it's because we've taken on too much. We're stressed. If you find yourself eating or drinking too much, think about the reason why. What's going on? That urgency or that constant pressure to be in go mode. So some of the things that we can do: prioritize, have that to-do list, schedule your most demanding task during the morning. Usually we can get a little bit more done during the morning. Most people with dementia, not everybody, but for the most part, between 9 and 11 can be some pretty good times if they've slept all night, they had a good breakfast. 9 and 11, that's when I always used to do assessments on folks with dementias, between 9 and 11. Schedule an easy job after a difficult one, or a short task after a long one. Make time for breaks. Some things that you can do is go out and take a walk by yourself. Step away, get yourself a music list. Include some of those holiday songs that you remember too, to be able to clear your mind and refocus on why we do this in the first place. Food does not have to be homemade. I hope you have figured that out. Honey baked ham makes a beautiful Christmas dinner. Kroger makes a fantastic Christmas dinner. Or you do something like I did this several years ago. I said, instead of me cooking everything, because I'm the host, we're going to do the meat, and everybody who's coming needs to bring the sides. And if you don't bring it, we're not having it. It worked great. And that way we're responsible for one thing, and then everybody else brought the rest of the stuff. We just changed up the tradition a little bit. Again, focusing on why we do this. Be kind to your family, expecting that we're all going to be imperfect. Don't get caught up in the commercialism. And no one expects extreme achievement from you. Don't do that to yourself. I did want to leave some time for questions. I think we've got right at 5 minutes. Questions or ideas. Here's my information. There's mine and Jamie's information, and information about the West Center. Let me stop sharing. If anybody has any thoughts, ideas, or questions, you can unmute or you can put in the chat.
Holly, I wanted to say I was able to write my mom's Christmas letter. I haven't emailed or mailed it yet, but I got it so that it's no more than 2 pages. But we hadn't written one since I moved her in 2018. And so I kind of did a short, this is what happened from then till she's gone.
Yeah.
To let them all the times that she moved.
But you got it done.
And I did get it done.
Very good.
Now I just have to decide if I'm taking it to the printer and saying, will you do this on my paper? Or printing it myself.
Sure.
But I've already got the paper.
Good, good. I'm glad. Thanks for sharing that. Marla just wrote in, what is appropriate to give staff at a memory care center for Christmas? Now, depending on where they are, food's always good. I'll tell you that food's always good. But some places, like at the West Center, we actually send a letter to our families because we ask that we have like a fund, and families give to that fund, and then we divide it out amongst the staff so that because lots of times we want to give something to direct caregivers, but we're not stopping to think about the people in the laundry or the people doing the food or the people cleaning the room. So whenever individuals want to do something, I tend to go with the food or snacks, trays of cookies, that kind of thing. Jamie, can you think of anything else?
No, I was just going to say, check with the community to see what they're already doing to make it, fair or across the board. And they might already have something going on that you might not be aware of. So
yeah, lots of times they'll have that, or they may be going to have a Christmas party, and there's a way that you can contribute to that Christmas party so that it's for everybody. But then they make sure and say this was provided by the Smith family. Yeah, good question. Other questions, thoughts, ideas? Thank you. Well, you will get a copy of the recording. You'll get all of the PowerPoint. Jamie will add that website that I forgot to put on there. But if you think of anything else, Jamie and I are always here. The best way to get us with email, because we can answer those at any time. And we are here, and we hope that you have a great holiday season with your loved one. And please share this. Yes, somebody said, I'm going to share this with my family. That's why we do it. This will also go on our YouTube page. Share this with your family. Send them the PowerPoints. Absolutely.
And please join us for next week. We'll do the Hope and Caregiving on December 7th, and then December 13th, the vascular stroke and depression. I'll send that information to everybody as well.
Yep. And Jamie will also send information about our support groups. Tomorrow at 11, we meet in person at the West Center if you're interested in coming. Thanks, everybody. We were glad you were here today. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.